We are speaking with Anand Kulkarni, Vice President of Tata Motors Electric Passenger Car Division. Anand, thank you for speaking to us and thank you for having us here. We've just seen the unveil of the Tata's new Generation 3 platform and a concept car based on it. And I will let Anand, if you could just introduce us to the concept, I mean, the thought behind it and, what is Tata aiming to achieve with the car?
Sure. Thank you, Sergius. So you see, we started our electrification a few years back with Generation 1, which was typically an approach where we used our existing aspirational successful product like the Nexon EV and used that vehicle for electrification, which has helped us put ourselves into the electrification space. It's been very successful. Last week we also announced the Curve a couple of weeks back, and which is the Generation 2, where we take away a few of the constraints that would have existed on existing platforms and then do something better. Today with the Avinya, we have showcased a concept for Generation 3, which is a paradigm shifting approach of building grounds up pure EVs. And therefore, it's all about not only offering great solutions for electrification, but doing that in a manner of a holistic approach, which keeps the customers, which keeps our occupants at the center. It's a human-centric approach, and therefore tries to resolve and improve upon a lot of challenges that we have today, both from a customer-centric perspective as well as from being able to deliver those solutions to our customers.
Yeah, so I think in fact that's something that's quite obvious with the car. It's like an inside-out kind of approach, like you said, the customer or the occupants are at the center, and you've designed everything around it. And on that thought, like you said, this is step 3, Generation 3, and it's a skateboard or a clean sheet of paper that you've started with, gives you that kind of flexibility. Apart from that, what other sort of freedoms have you got now with going with, let's say, a clean sheet? So for example, would you all be exploring, say, an 800-volt architecture? Is that possible even, is one thing?
So when you look at electric vehicles, you are looking at multiple opportunities, multiple options to deploy the tech in the most effective manner. When you look at doing this, the range anxiety or anxiety about what kind of range the car will give is the first and foremost. So with our first generation, second generation, we have progressively improved upon the ranges. The Gen 3 approach will have a minimum range of 500 kilometers. Okay. And of course, when we do very high range cars, we would also have to look at the charging capability. Right. And therefore, with this platform, we would introduce, or the car will be able to charge at a very fast pace. And while the exact numbers for what number of minutes it will, which product will charge is still something which is under engineering. Right. We would probably have on the platform a sub 30-minute charging. Okay. That can put in a 500 kilometer range. So you immediately have a solution that can make this car go to or be put to significantly higher use than some of the earlier products.
Right. Okay. So, but in terms of, let's say, like, so one was the the 800-volt system, or even battery chemistry. In fact, from what I know, at least that the Nexon, you all use LFP cells, which today, in light of all of this concern around EV safety and fires, I think it's the safest option from what I would know. And I think you all also use cylindrical cells in the current Nexon EV, which is also further sort of better in terms of cooling. Now that you're looking at in Gen 3, are you all still going to stick with LFP cells as the market leaders? What are your thoughts on this battery safety?
So there are a lot of chemistries. I mean, the chemistry is not necessarily dependent upon one single factor. You have to look at multiple factors. What we have tried to do with this architecture is we have made the entire architecture cell format and cell chemistry agnostic. Okay. Which means that depending upon which is the most appropriate solution, we will be able to deploy that kind of chemistry. I don't think we are saying that only one type of chemistry would be useful, but we are saying that depending on which markets it goes to, depending on which application we put it to, we could do whichever is the best suited solution.
Okay, so that's interesting. So basically, what you're saying is that both chemistry and cell
The
structure,
format, yeah.
So cylindrical, prismatic, blade, everything is possible on this platform.
Possible.
Okay.
Possible.
Okay. Oh, awesome. And the other thing with coming to the Avinya itself, the concept from what we were just discussing with your colleagues, is that you have a wheelbase currently at 2,900
Roughly,
mm,
yeah.
Roughly, and you can increase that further still, or even take it sort of smaller, right? Is there like an outer limit and maybe a smaller limit that you would stop at, and then you look at another kind of platform?
So we could look at some amount of flexibility within the wheelbases itself, but the flexibility could also over and above that come from the body styles.
Right.
And therefore you could do vehicles which are correct. Therefore you could do vehicles which are longer and be then capable of addressing different requirements. For example, a 7-seater could be possible. You could also shrink this and could make this into smaller format vehicles. Now you can't stretch and shrink endlessly. There have to be a certain limit to this. So we are evaluating what would be the sweet point or the center of gravity of how much we would want to shrink and expand, so that we can come back with more solutions built on this entire platform.
And so in terms of your current 3-step strategy, I mean, personally, I think I really like that fact. In fact, I think we've done a story or a column or two on that strategy. It's given you the quick first mover advantage. You all are leaders in the segment, which is fantastic and something I really admire. But going forward, how long do you think that you can manage product portfolios across these three, let's say your Gen 1, Gen 2 and Gen 3? Obviously, at some point, you will have to start tapering those off, or do you think you can actually keep this going on for a long period of time?
So that's a very interesting question, because you should look at it from a need-based or a need perspective. What kind of vehicles are expected in the market? What use cases do we help our customers achieve? And what is the best possible manner in which those solutions can be achieved? That's how all of this depends on. So each one, whether it is Gen 1, Gen 2 or Gen 3, has a very unique capability. For example, just like you said, the Gen 1 had the ability to do an electrification at a very accessible point in a very quick manner. The Gen 2 sort of expands upon that and provides more capability to the platform, and the Gen 3 is a completely different take. So each of these solutions could continue to remain relevant, and when they up to what point should they overlap is something that we can determine at some point in the future.
Right. So you're saying and this is just for also my understanding, that you can technically take Gen 1 even further. It's not necessarily, let's say, step 1 that was just a sort of a makeshift, but it's actually a genuine platform that you could take further.
Beyond a certain point, you would want to make some updates, or you would want to make some corrections. It would be too speculative to say whether there is a finite point at which it would need an intervention, because right now I think those solutions are very well accepted. People have gotten used to it, and it meets most of their use cases. So that's how we look at it.
So great, and also just a question from you as from an engineering point of view, and again, being the leaders in the EV space here, do you think consumers in the budget segment, so let's say in the hatchbacks and the smaller compact sedans, they would be willing to pay a little more for something like based on a Gen 3 kind of platform, or would they be sort of more comfortable with the quick conversions that we have? Where do you see the industry heading? Will we see these kind of skateboards and Gen 3s only at the premium end, or do you think it's actually going to come down for Tata Motors and also perhaps the industry? I mean,
so I may not be able to comment on how the future is going to look like in this space, particularly for smaller vehicles. But if you look at what is happening in China, for example, there are hybrid solutions which exist, which are neither skateboard, but neither are they Gen 1 approaches. People do them in a way of being able to liberate the space for a much better battery layout, a battery structure layout, and the ability to do different powertrains. So that's one possibility definitely that can come up. Whether it would be a skateboard or not would be premature to comment upon at this moment.
Okay. Yeah, no, I was just wondering whether, not whether the product would be, but what would the market drive you towards,
Well, the market always drives you from a use case perspective. There is a certain price point and there is a certain performance expectation. How we as engineers are able to couple that together and achieve the best possible solution which is meaningful to customers as well as to ourselves is the solution that we have to determine.
Right. Absolutely. And, speaking about, again, your Gen 3 platform, what are the plans for it in terms of deploying it across the Tata Group? So with JLR, or will this only remain at Tata Motors,
So, we share a very deep relationship with JLR, particularly on the electrical side. So, there's a lot of exchange of thoughts, ideas that keeps happening on both sides. But this is not based on a JLR platform. And therefore, whether it can be leveraged at some point in the future for some different applications is something that only time will tell us. At the moment, this is specific to TML.
Right, and I think the development, everything was all a TML.
Yes, so the development has been done by the TML team. Of course, as I said, there is know-how exchange, and that know-how exchange has factored into this project as well. Some learnings have come in, but it is being developed on a bespoke basis.
Correct, for TML.
For TML.
Right. Excellent. Yeah, because when you look at, I think the electrification future, it's got to have sharing and sort of synergies.
Sharing is a good thing, but then sharing also means that you have to have a common vision at all times. Otherwise, sharing itself, because you have to share, would not make much sense. Now, if there are overlapping areas in which the sharing can happen, it's good to do. But trying to force fit something might not be ideal.
Right. And on the electric journey, I think in fact even before you all embarked on the electric journey, perhaps with a lot of also maybe good sight, you all have moved away from the ladder on frame passenger kind of vehicles. So you're using that technology but for a suited application where it's perhaps better suited, like in commercial.
You mean a ladder frame technology on a vehicle, on an electric
passenger
vehicle?
No, on passenger. So I was then coming to that. So now in electric vehicles, it's obviously a huge challenge, right, to do that. Yeah. So do you? So how do you see this sort of electrification journey happening on the CV side, on the commercial side? Do you think a skateboard chassis can have sort of to play a solution in CVs?
It would be difficult to sort of make a judgment on that at this moment because that space is just warming up. And therefore, it will take some time for people to realize the benefits. Again, that is a very, very cost sensitive segment from a TCO basis, and therefore, people need to realize how they are going to get the benefits out of electric solutions. Ladder frames would have definitely constrained us because the batteries couldn't have been placed through and through. So still some work that needs to be done in that area, I would think.
Right. And I think, we are a little short on time. I know you've got a lot of interviews lined up, but the car itself, we know it's a concept, Avinya. To me, it looks great. I really love the fact that it's sometimes even hard to classify it. It's a shooting brake, it's a hatchback, it's an estate, it's an SUV. But when you do come to the market, like you said, I think you all said at the unveil in 2025. Where do you think you all will lean towards? Personally, I hope you all will lean towards something that's unclassifiable, but will you lean towards maybe an SUV or a hatch, or where do you all think?
So it's a completely different typology, Sergius. It is everything combined into one, and that is also the part of the disruption that we are hoping to achieve. And therefore, let's not sort of classify it into one of the segments that we know and understand today. It could open up a completely different segment by itself.
Yeah, so you're saying the production vehicle, because this one I know, and like I said,
But one of the things that we are going to try is to make sure that the production vehicle does not deviate too far from the concept, because there's otherwise no use. And therefore, the proportionality of the entire model and the sizes, etc., we should try and adhere to it as close as possible.
Right.
So we'll have to see how the development goes, because there's a lot of engineering stuff that has to go on between now and when the car comes into production.
Correct.
And we'll see how that happens.
Right. So perhaps a taller version, and you might get the SUV in the same. So.
So I wouldn't be able to say on that.
Right. Yeah, I guess, yeah, that's all we have time for. And thank you so much, Anand, for speaking to us. I know you're quite excited also about this, as obviously we are, and I'm sure our viewers are also.
Sure.
2025 is when we can expect the production car
yes.
on Gen 3. Right. So we'll be, of course, keeping our eyes open and always in touch with you all. Anand, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. Thank you very much.